So, we are here today on a beautiful Sunday. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Kaids Alexandro, and today we are going to be talking to the one and only Lorna Abwonji, and she is a fashion creative from Nairobi. She has a wealth of experience over 13 years in the Kenyan fashion space. And today we'll just be talking about the importance of branding and telling your story in order to attract the customers you want and keep them and to grow your African fashion business. Welcome, Lorna.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, tell us a little bit about what you do, and yeah, we can start from there.
What I do a lot of things.
Tell us some of it.
I can't tell you all. We'll be here all day, but I do. Let me stick majorly into fashion. I like to see people, and I know there's this whole cancel culture going on, and everybody is toxic, and everybody is gaslighting, and all that. For me, I don't think I take people at face value. I would definitely try and reach out to someone beyond what they're showing on the surface. So that is in the way that I care about people. I also care about fashion, and not just the Kenyan fashion industry, but the African fashion industry. I had the privilege of being in a fellowship called the Mandela Washington Fellowship. That was an initiative of former president of the US, Barack Obama. It is because of Obama that I went to the US. Yay! But what I actually loved about the fellowship, it wasn't necessarily the fact, you know how the first time you go to the US, you think it will be about the US. For me, it was actually about the Africans I met, because you live in a continent where you think you will always interact with Africans from different countries. Yes, in Kenya, we're privileged. We'll meet a lot of East Africans especially. But this was a time now, I met Africans from all over. I didn't even know where Cape Verde was until until we did the fellowship. So interacting with people from all sorts of countries really helped me, with the questions I asked, really helped me understand a bit more about probably how fashion works in other African countries. And in the US, I did learn about their systems, which is very different. In Africa, our fashion system tends to be more made to measure. The US, it seems to be more ready to wear. That's more popular. And I've also had the privilege of visiting Germany, where most people were very impressed that I was a designer because they don't know any designers. But when you come here, everybody knows a designer, whether they are a designer for real or they've given themselves a title of a designer. I just think it becomes so interesting. And basically what I can say, what I've learned from my fashion experience over the years, it's good to expose yourself to other cultures, how the industry is, and not to assume that just because fashion works this way abroad, it will probably work the same here. So I studied fashion locally. I went to local colleges. I'm not a university graduate, which surprises a lot of people. I went through fashion school just to learn basically how to put garments together. But a lot of the things I do now, I have learned through personal research. YouTube has been a very good resource for me. So I learn a lot from the internet, and Pinterest also has been amazing. And I make a point of getting into competitions. When I was younger, it was about winning. Now I've realized it's about growth, meeting other creatives. I really don't care if I win anymore. I've entered one recently. I think the one I've entered recently is one of the most intimidating ones I have entered, because the caliber of work in that competition is very high. It's called Foundations Revealed. They do historical fashion.
Oh, wow.
So
that's something I'm so interested in too. Like, I like the historical. So is it historical, African historical fashion, or just worldwide?
That's actually why I entered. I was like, we need to start putting some African blood in this thing. They mostly even if you see most of the entries, you'll see it's mostly the 18th century, 19th century European fashion. But because the theme for this year was literature, and they said it can be any book of a character, I decided I'm going to do an African book.
So which book did you decide to do?
I did The River and the Source.
Okay.
And I did the character Akoko, because I loved that book in high school. I loved it. It was one of those books I actually read in a day. I couldn't believe it. A literature book. Anyway, so I had to buy a copy. I had to research Akoko. And I also had to research what Luos wore or didn't wear. In traditionally, we were basically happily naked people before colonialists told us, we were naked, but we wore ornaments. So I had to come up with a way of mixing, because the book gives a description, but I don't think the author really researched too much what we wore. Yeah, because people assume we all did loincloths and what. It's not true for every African tribe.
True.
For Luos, loincloths were when you got married. Before you got married, you didn't wear a loincloth. You were Ivio. So yeah.
You mentioned something about the how in the Western, what your experience in the West, that nobody knew a designer. But when you're in Kenya, you're in Africa, you know, like at least you know at least 2 or 3 designers or people who are creating clothes. So I think it's important to have that distinction when we start talking about branding for African fashion creatives, because you know, when people think branding, they're thinking the big European brands, they're thinking Versace, they're thinking Prada. But what we're talking about here is even in the small scale, even if you are a neighborhood fundi, a neighborhood tailor, you still need to show your clients that, one, you're serious about what you're doing, and two, you need to differentiate yourself from another designer, because there are so many in our space, in the African fashion space. I think that's why this topic itself is very important, to kind of have, you know, a brand to put forward for your clients. So tell me about your branding story. Like, how did you get from being a design student to having your own brand, and what are the challenges that you encountered in that journey?
I like that you said the word journey, because it's actually a journey. I think first of all, it starts with how we were taught fashion in school. The way I was educated, because the system has changed a bit now. I think right now they're trying to streamline it more with international standards. But at that time, it was more about the people who go to fashion school are those people who dropped out of school, and you're doing the skill that will help you get a job. So the way you're taught is learn how to do everything so that you can survive in this country. Stitching, whatever it is you stitch, whatever picks up you. So we learned curtains, we learned pillows, we learned everything.
Right.
So at the beginning when I graduated, I was doing almost everything. So it was more about making money. So you know how you make things, and of course, probably most of the things you make are nice. So everyone will tell you how nice it is. And once in a while, you'll make a few sales. So you'll think, oh, since I sold that, that's probably what I need to do. Then at some point, it dies down. So at the beginning, I basically I thought I was just, because I started designing clothes when I was a teenager. I just used to draw them. I never understood the practicalities of putting them together at that time. I was just drawing anything. But when I went to school, it's now when I learned how to put together an outfit. So my dream, because of course I watched all the shows, The Bold and the Beautiful and all the other things, I assumed people are just going to take what I have designed.
Right.
But the reality is people actually tell you, I have this fabric, I saw this thing on the internet, this is what I want.
Yeah.
So at the beginning, that's where I was stuck at the beginning. Really for me, I had entered a competition my competition thing, and I entered a competition called Reds. It was called the Reds Africa Fashion Design Awards. I entered that in 2008. And when I entered it, I was with some very experienced designers, and they all had brand names, and I didn't have a brand name at the time. So the ideas I had come with were, I wasn't really thinking about the meaning of the name. I think I was just thinking a nice name that sounds nice. So I came up with so many funny names like House of Diva and what. And my dad is like my #1 supporter. He basically rolled his eyes and was like, "What is that?" So he actually is the one who came up with I'm laughing at the thing you fixed. Anyway, he actually came up with Miamara creation. And Miamara means give me mine in Luo. And when I had it, I just knew that is the name. That name makes so much sense. I'm the one who added the creations at the end, because at that time I was just thinking I don't want to be limited to clothes. See, remember I learned how to make bed sheets and curtains and everything.
Right.
So I went with the Miamara creations. I did the competition. It was a very good experience. Because it was a very creative process. And the goodness of Reds is that we didn't make the clothes. We had to actually work with a tailor and explain to them what we're doing and let them stitch it. So it was also my first experience giving someone instructions on how I want my outfit made. So that was a bit of a learning experience. At least for me, I got along very well with the tailors. It was actually an institution that was training destitute girls how to stitch. So those are the girls we were working with. So after that, then again, I thought, you know how you think I've done this competition, I'm going to be this big designer. Nah, it doesn't happen like that. So at first they really tried to promote us. I did Samantha's bridal show. I did all sorts of things, but it didn't really pick up. So at some point I had to, I thought of trying to get into more fashion shows, because when you're a designer and you're in school and the way the world looks outside, you always think doing a fashion show is what is going to propel you to the next stage.
Right.
So at that time, there was no fashion shows for upcoming designers. All the fashion shows were for people who had been in the industry for a long time. So in 2010, my sister was working for Samantha's Bridal, and she came across some information that the museum was celebrating 100 years. And because her boss started to do fashion shows and get sponsors, Lorna thought she could also do that. So I decided to try and pitch the idea to the museum for their 100-year celebration, that they would allow upcoming designers to do a fashion show in their hall. So I did everything by faith. I didn't even have many sponsors. The museum maybe gave us their space for the photo shoot. I managed to get a lot of designers to participate. I didn't think about how much I was charging them, because I thought that I'll get money from ticket sales.
Was that a harsh reality check?
It was even more than harsh. If my dad hadn't bailed me out, I don't know what would have happened. But funnily enough, the event was a huge success. What happened on that day was the road to the museum was being constructed, and the Chinese decided the day of the event is the day they're demolishing the gate. So we didn't even have signage to redirect people. So a lot of people came and turned away because they thought there is no event because there's no gate. But there was another gate, but a lot of people didn't know about it. So that's how we lost ticket sales. I went into a mini depression. My dad came through for me. But doing that event is actually what got me the opportunity to go to the US. So as much as it was such a dreadful thing at that time, just being daring enough to try and do something is what helped me get into the fellowship in the first place. And also, that is,
no, I would like to mention, because you have put forward two very important lessons that I would like to highlight there. Because one, the name you picked was a name that meant something to you, and was a name that meant something in the grand scheme of things in your language, right? So I think for designers who are looking to brand their that businesses, they need to be careful with the names they pick. Like the picture I put up there,
I
like
know.
that's a big name,
Biden,
but
the
we still
president,
don't know. We don't know what they're selling. I have no idea what they're selling.
2019 is not when I really started thinking about the name, but it's because we were in a fashion incubator and we were actually made to think about our names. So anyway, after doing that event actually launched a lot of careers. A lot of the big names in fashion in Kenya actually started from my event. And also another thing that happened is after my event, the shows that were there at the time started giving opportunities to upcoming designers. They stopped freezing us. Because there's a lot of creativity. When people are young, you really don't even care what you're designing. As long as it looks fancy, you'll get a lot of media attention. Because we got cover in a lot of newspapers and magazines. So it really propelled. But because I was in debt, and my self-esteem was a bit broken, I got a job. So Miamara was in the back burner for a bit. In 2013 is now when I fully went straight into now doing my brand, Miamara. And of course, I went back to my old mistakes of just doing everything people want. So by 27, when was our last election? Was it 2016 or 2017?
I want to
I
say
think
2017.
2017, yes. So by then I realized there are so many people getting into the fashion industry, young people doing what I'm doing cheaper than me. How am I going to survive in the next couple of years? At the same time, I'm noticing a lot of the brands I grew up looking at when we were younger are closing down or changing something in their brands. So I had said this, I need to do something before I become irrelevant. And one of the things I learned in the fellowship, which I went to in 2016, is how to stay relevant throughout the years. So I knew I have to do something to stand out. I can't compete with people who've just come from college and I'm still doing what I'm doing. We're all doing the same thing, basically. So luckily for me in 2019, I did a fashion incubator. We did it with Anne Macrae from Kiko Romeo, and it was funded by an ITC, International Trade Center. It was a 1-year process. And through that process, we learned now about brand. Because she started with a simple question of what do we think about when we think of Kiko Romeo? And I was like, what do people think about when they think about Miamara? And I started noticing a lot of people knew me for kangas. And I don't know why. I guess some of my earliest work was always with kanga. I've always liked kanga. And then I guess also working for kanga culture, there are people to this day who thought I was the owner of that business. But I realized a lot of people associate me with kanga, and I was like, I should explore some of my kanga designs back instead of the kitenge or ankara. And because a lot of people are using that to represent, I realized after meeting Nigerians that someone who is not in Africa wouldn't know the difference between ankara that's from Kenya and ankara that's from West Africa in terms of the fabric. And I wanted to use something that is East African, at least, even if it's not Kenyan. An East African fabric that is straight from here, that I won't struggle to get and I won't struggle to source, and that is unique and is limited edition print, and that if you see me with this top today and you want it, just know this print is not available anymore. So it has some exclusivity to it.
Right.
So when we went through the branding class, one of the things we were told to look at is check the name of your brand name, what it means in other countries. Because some people realize your brand, maybe if you're trying to sell, because it depends on the target customer. Maybe you're trying to sell it in this country and they can't pronounce it, or they pronounce it, but it means something totally different in their language. So we're told, apart from you thinking about the English version, think about what it means in another country, especially the ones you're targeting for to sell. And for me, I've realized most people think Myanmar is my name. I have accepted it. I've been called Miss Mia very many times. So yeah. So for me, I think the name is perfect for me because my brand right now is so much more about celebrating African culture. I like that my name is from my tribe, and I like the meaning of the name. And because of the many years I've been in the industry, one of the main things that stands out for me is when I'm dressing, because most of the people I dress are women. There's a lot of self-esteem attached to what you wear. How you look really matters to you. So I've always encouraged people to come up with their own way of wearing clothes. You don't follow fashion trends. It seems like a good idea, but you realize not every trend is suitable for you. So for me, my tagline is usually create your own style. So I know some designers will disagree with me, but I accepted it long ago that we have secondhand clothes in this country, and I always believe that you can always mix stuff. You don't have to only buy Myanmar or you only buy from one designer. Buy from all of us. Mix it up. Make something that works for you. Because this thing of what I don't like is a client coming to me with a design from another designer and telling me to make it instead of just supporting that designer. So that's why I'm like, create your own style. Come up, get pieces from all of us, get pieces even from Tumba, get from imported clothes, mix it up, have your own style identity. So if you're coming to me and you wanted a specific Kanga dress, then I can give you the Kanga dress. But don't make me make what someone else is specializing in doing.
That's a very good point you made, because then you're not a designer. If you're copying somebody else's design, then that makes you, a tailor, or somebody who has removed themselves from the creative process. And this is a problem, and I think this is a big problem for people who are designers coming up. They don't want to say no to money, because you need to eat. Everybody needs to eat. You don't want to say no to money. So when a client comes to you with a picture, or from their phone, from a magazine, and you're like, I can't say no, I need this money, and you end up making a name for yourself, but in the wrong way. And that's also takes away from your brand. It takes away from your branding process. So that was a very good point that you made.
Yeah. And the flip side of creating your own collection, like the way I've created mine, is the way Kenyans react is, you've done such a good job. I have this fabric. I want you to make this and this for me. Something completely different from what you've already created. To some extent, it's flattering that they have acknowledged your skill, and to the other extent, it feels like you're just taking me back to exactly what I want to be.
Yeah.
I don't mind having the consultation with a client and coming up with something they want, but I don't like being boxed into trying to copy someone else, because I think it's a bit disrespectful, especially if it's a fellow designer that in Kenya. It's usually like very, very, very bad.